Known as the first elder race to populate the continent east of the Great Sea, the diminutive gnome people made their homes in the mountains of Mahakam and Tir Toker, where they mastered mining and smithwork, forging their famous Gwaihir blades of dark iron, said to be the greatest swords in the world. In time, they were joined by the dwarves, a stout, robust race who arrived by sea, and similar to the gnomes, made their homes in mountains like Mahakam, specializing in mining and smithwork, though they were more open to travel, trade, and warfare. While gnomes and dwarves populated the north, the race of werebubs inhabited lands further south, while the female nymph species and their various subgroups populated natural environments like Brokilon Forest, where dryads were ruled by a queen of great wisdom and authority who suffered no threats against her lands and people. Then there were the halflings, who never established a realm of their own, instead living and working in the settlements of others. Though their diminutive size and pleasant demeanor led many to see them as easy targets for exploitation, halflings were expert slingers and could prove fearsome fighters when provoked. Roughly 2,000 years after the arrival of humans on the continent, the long-lived elven race suffered a cataclysm on their homeworld, and so traveled to the lands of dwarves and gnomes, where they sailed white ships onto the shores of the continent. Arriving during the Age of Migration, conflicts arose with the dwarves, but even so, the elves eventually established a number of majestic realms throughout the north, building magnificent stone palaces while living in harmony with nature. In time, the elves sundered into the more imperialist NL, who journeyed to another world, founded the city of Tirnalia, enslaved humans wherever encountered, and waged war against the magical unicorn species, and the more isolationist Enshe faction who remained, feeling a deep connection to the land and its creatures. Fiercely proud of their burgeoning civilization, the elves of the continent suffered terribly when the arrival of humans marked the beginning of the end for all they achieved. Approximately 2,000 years after the migration of elves onto the continent, a pivotal event known as the Conjunction of Spheres caused a great many universes to interconnect, allowing travel between dimensions while bringing forth a new form of energy which could be harnessed into magic. As a result of the conjunction of spheres, otherworldly monsters, beasts, and peoples came pouring onto the continent of the elder races, like ghouls, graveyears, and vampires, now forced to survive in unnatural environments. The conjunction of spheres also allowed the first human population to arrive upon the continent, leading some to believe they originated from another world which they destroyed. While some humans settled in the south, the Dauk and Wasgar peoples established themselves in the Northlands, later known as Kovir and Povis. Although the Dauk and Wasgar did not long survive, their legacy endured, believed to have introduced worship of the goddess Melitele, one of the most widely revered deities on the continent. Dividing their world's history into years before and after a momentous event called the Resurrection, the next wave of human migrants came around 760 AR when the Nordling people landed at the mouth of the Yaruga River. Once arrived, a man named Jan Becker was the first to control and harness magic, using it to help establish human settlements. Training others, these sorcerers discovered that a chaotic energy existed in all living things, which could be transformed into elemental enchantments. Although anyone could learn to use these abilities, the most powerful were sources, those born with a rare, natural affinity for magic, capable of unleashing extraordinary amounts of energy. Sources, therefore, required a great deal of training and discipline to avoid harming themselves or others. Although humans lived extremely short lives when compared to elves, they reproduced far faster, and in the coming centuries spread across the continent, threatening the borders of the elder races. Though some elves and men did attempt to peacefully coexist, their cultures were radically different, as humans did not respect the natural world, brazenly cutting down forests and wiping out animal populations. The war inevitably came to the north. The rise of Nordling realms could not be halted, leading many elves to abandon their cities, retreating into the mountains to wait out the trouble, believing the age of human dominance would eventually pass like a drought or heavy winter. Taking advantage of this opportunity, humans started to populate former elven settlements, making use of their expertly crafted buildings and prosperous locations to establish cities like Novigrad, Oxenfurt, Vesemir, Tredegar, Maribor, Sidaris, and Sintra. As humans expanded and spread throughout the continent, a legendary leader named Sambuk became the first Nordling king, establishing his realm in the Lower Pontar, while his descendant, King Radovid I, formed the powerful kingdom of Redania. From this mighty lineage also came the realm of Kovir and Povis in the far north, founded by Radovid I's brother, Prince Troidan. As the years went on, other realms emerged throughout the northern half of the continent, including the Hangfors League, Kedwin, Edirn, Temeria, Sidaris, Verden, Bruges, Lyria and Rivia, Sintra, Sodden, the island of Skellige, Nazaire, Metina, Ebbing, and Toussaint. While the southern half of the continent came under the control of the Nilfgaardian Empire, a unified power which expanded beyond their initial borders to conquer a number of states they converted into provinces. Yet the rapid expansion of humanity not only resulted in war with the elves and other races of these lands, but also against each other as these burgeoning realms fought for territory and resources. By the 9th century, a number of kingdoms were embroiled in a 6-year war until peace was re-established by Rafford the White, a great sorcerer who mediated the conflict. Seeking to unite their people and take a more active role in the administration of the northern kingdoms, magic users throughout the north formed the Brotherhood of Sorcerers, which became one of the most powerful and prominent organizations in the continent. Integrating themselves into the governments of the northern realms, the Brotherhood sent their highly trained agents to serve as advisors to the Nordling kings. Each of these sorcerers then gathered their own small army of spies, informants, and allies, gaining so much influence they were often able to convince or manipulate monarchs into doing whatever they wished, and where that failed, could have the ruler replaced. In the south, magic users were given far less deference, forced to abide by strict rules and regulations set by the state to prevent abuses of power. Having lost nearly all their former territories to humans by the 11th century, the famous elven heroine Ellarin sought to wage a final, desperate war to fight back against their enemies and defend one of their last remaining strongholds in Sharawed. Yet many understood she had no chance of victory, and so the Elder Elves refused to fight and advised her to cease this suicidal effort. Undeterred, she inspired many of the younger generation to take up the cause, but in the end was soundly defeated and her forces slaughtered. Known as the White Rose of Sharawed, Ellarin was revered by her fellow elves, remembered as a courageous figure of legend who did not flinch in the face of insurmountable odds, preferring to die in battle than live in hiding. Yet her actions also had serious consequences for her people, as only the younger generation of elves were able to procreate, and with so many killed in her war, their population would never recover. Seeking to prevent humans from building upon another of their creations, the elves destroyed the Palace of Sharawed, leaving it a ruin and site of pilgrimage for those who wished to honor their fallen champion. Having lost yet another war against humans, the northeastern realm of Dol Blathana became the last elven stronghold until it inevitably fell to the kingdom of Edirn. Refusing to surrender, the noble elf Filavandril retreated into the wilds and became leader of the Free Elves, a group dedicated to continuing the fight against humanity and retaking their lost lands. As the centuries went on, the elves became a fractured people, split into those willing to work in human cities and rural folk who kept away from others and lived off the land. With Nordlings now ruling over all the northern kingdoms, elves, dwarves, gnomes, and halflings became second-class citizens, sometimes used as scapegoats during times of hardship, leading to pogroms in which they were rounded up and massacred. Other races, like the Werebubs, lost their homelands and migrated to the Mahakam Mountains, while the Dryads waged an unending war against humanity in a desperate attempt to preserve their woodlands, killing or capturing any who ventured into the forest of Brokilon. Nevertheless, the Dryads lost more territory with each passing year, seeing many of their lands deforested and settled by humans. In addition to the losses inflicted upon the elder races, other intelligent creatures of the continent suffered just as much, if not more, from human expansion, with unicorns, sylvans, leprechauns, vampires, godlings, merpeople, dragons, trolls, and others driven to near extinction. In order to deal with the more primitive beings which now roamed the continent and threatened Nordling settlements, humans created the Order of Witchers, young boys trained as expert warriors under brutal conditions. Whereas soldiers were taught traditional fighting styles, Witchers were specialized champions dedicated to acquiring knowledge about beasts and monsters. Sometimes this meant learning specific combat techniques to kill their target, while other situations might call for a spell or ritual to end the threat. Further enhancing their ferocity in battle, Witchers were taught to employ simple magic signs, such as Ard, which sent a telekinetic thrust of energy to knock back an opponent, Axi, used to calm or manipulate a target's mind, Igni, able to send forth a burst of fire, Quen, which created an energy shield to protect against sonic blasts, and Yarden, which inspired fear, slowed down opponents, and brought non-corporeal beings into physical reality. Potential Witchers also ate a diet of natural stimulants and underwent the Trial of Grasses, a highly secretive ritual created primarily by the sorcerer Alzur, which exposed them to dangerous poisons and mutagenic compounds which often killed the initiate. However, if the student survived, they gained superhuman speed, strength, agility, night vision, and sensory perception, along with longer lifespans, resistance to disease, and the ability to drink potions, which temporarily increased their skills. These transformations also gave Witchers cat or snake-like eyes, a raspy metal voice, and limited emotional range. After graduating from one of several training facilities, like the Wolf, Cat, and Griffin schools, each of which specialized in their own unique fighting style, Witchers went out into the world, wielding a sword of steel and another of silver to slay monsters for coin, enduring the scorn and ridicule of others, including humans, elves, and mages, who treated them like freaks, mutants, and ruthless mercenaries. Though they were considered dangerous, unnatural creatures by many throughout their history, anti-Witcher fervor was inflamed by the publication of Monstrum, written by an anonymous sorcerer, which cast them as rogues without virtue and diabolic creations. Among the many students trained in the Wolf School of Kaer Morhen, a northern fortress accessible only to Witchers and sorcerers, Vesemir was a wise, courageous, and skilled monster slayer in the prime of his life during the early 12th century. In time, Vesemir became an important leader in their community, responsible for the preservation of their school into the 13th century and beyond. Though he did not realize it in his youth, Vesemir would play a pivotal role in events of such magnitude they would affect the future of the entire continent. Love The Witcher or any other series? Then why not check out Audible, where they have the largest collection of audiobooks available. Sign up now and get a free audiobook, or else give the gift of membership to someone you know. If you prefer to read your stories, then click on the link to the Kindle Unlimited plan and get access to as many ebooks as you wish. If you haven't already, be sure to check out The Witcher audiobooks, narrated by Peter Kenny, including the main novels and short stories which accompany the series. A special thanks to all those who contribute to Civilization X, like Tom Moonstruck Waters, Renee the Demigod, Ambassador Alex Nunez, and the Emperor of Mankind. If you'd like to help the channel, be sure to give a like, leave a comment, and subscribe so you'll be notified about future videos. If you want to go a step further, then check out the links below, click the YouTube join button, send a super thanks, buy merchandise from the store page, or visit patreon.com/civilizationx, where you can gain early access to videos, vote on future content, and watch the Patreon-only series, Heroes of Lore and Legend.